Great interview. Tom's such a great guy. Really appreciated him coming on. But I do want to transition here, just you and I, into the MLS Cup Final game. And Tom hit a little bit on the atmosphere and the environment. And the first thing I noticed when I was watching the game is exactly what he said: is the stadium and the town, just the surrounding town in general, all completely bought in. And I mentioned this to Jason when we were at Red Bull Arena. Was you went to Red Bull Arena and there were like half the stadium and for a playoff game, not wearing Red Bull gear, wearing regular t-shirts or other teams stuff. They were just there to be there. I went to Cincinnati and clearly now here in Columbus, you couldn't go 10 blocks outside the stadium without seeing FCC kits all over the place. You go into the stadium, there were 4 Red Bull kits. Me and my friend were 2 of them, and there were 2 other, odd offs, odd people in the group, and it was all FCC after that. Like those towns are completely bought in, and I guess my question to you is, how do you think we get that across everywhere? Like, how do we bring that to?
I was just wondering that same thing because I feel like one of MLS's biggest misses right now is in the New York market. Is there are so many people here. Like I could tell you just walking around on the streets, so many people here are wearing different types of soccer jerseys. They're playing soccer, they're watching soccer, they're really into the sport. And yet I find that it's so hard to find like a large fandom for the local teams here. It's a lot of like the European teams, you see a lot of like Messi's and Manchester United's and all that. And it's been such like I feel like it's been such a swing and a miss on the New York market, or I should say the metro market. I know I'm going off on a tangent and just focusing on our area. I'm being biased, I know, but I feel like I'd have to think on that more. I don't know if I have something off the top of my head. I mean, I think the locations of the stadiums honestly just doesn't help a little bit. I don't think there's a lot of people in the city that want to take the trip out to Harrison, New Jersey to go watch Red Bull. And I don't think NYC Stadium going out into Queens may help that a ton either. But, what are you supposed to do? You can't just plant a stadium in the middle of Manhattan. But I would say maybe big names. A lot of people here seem to like the European players. I think they would gravitate towards the big names. I wonder, I don't have it off the top of my head, but I wonder what NYC's popularity looked like when they had Lampard and Pirlo and David Villa versus now where they've transitioned into going for the younger players who are lesser known, but starting to build a reputation for themselves. So maybe that's the way to go. Obviously, I don't want to regress back into MLS retirement league, but maybe you kind of have some kind of a mix just for at least marketing sake.
I think that's now that's exactly where I was going to go, and I don't think you're in a bad spot picking on the New York market and being biased or whatever, because that's the biggest miss in the country, like bar none. You have a population of multiple millions of people in just this very condensed area, and you can't sell out a stadium. So it is a big miss. And I think you were spot on when Red Bull were investing in the Thierry Henrys, the Tim Cahills, the I'm not going to say the third one. When they were investing in those types of players,
Rafa Marquez.
all right, you're blocked. You're off the pod. Like I'm getting Tom back. Tom's out here. You're kicked off. Um, they were top 5 in attendance. I was actually just looking it up the other day. They were top 5 in attendance and leading attendance, like in 2013, I think, when Thierry first got here. I'm not like you. I'm not saying you need to go back in, but you need to have somebody recognizable. And if you go again, LAFC's got Vela, they've got Buwanga, they've got big attacking stars. Columbus doesn't necessarily have that, but they have people who are recognizable. Tucho Hernandez becoming recognizable when he's here. Diego Rossi from LA, people know about him who follow the league, but you know, Crew also had the Save the Crew movement that kept them involved, and I think they were really, really um, driven by that. To basically, as soon as the Crew was saved, 2 in the last 4 years, they won the cup. I mean, driven from stuff like that. I'm not saying every team needs to be on the brink of being moved, but having that other thing backing them and pushing them was also really good. In respect for the game and the atmosphere, I mean, the game itself was one of the most professionally played, and I think Tom mentioned it in the interview, where Columbus is a possession side. They want 60% of the ball. They want to move their pieces. They want to penetrate with passing and with penetrating runs. And not for a minute did they lose that shape. We'll talk through the goals here in a little bit in the possession, but Matt Doyle does a really good job of finding these clips, and so does MLS Gone Wild, of finding these clips and talking about this is what they want to do, this is how they did it, right? And you can see it was a pretty clear indication that the first thing that you want to do when you're playing against a team that wants to sit and counter is to pull them out of their shape. So they sat on the ball, they waited for somebody to press, and they broke the line with a pass. They got it into somebody like Darlington Nagbe, who can keep the ball 93% of the time that it's given to him, right? They also did other things really, really well. Only short corners, so you couldn't get countered on a corner kick, right? Aiden Morris, and I tweeted this, and a lot of people got on my side about it, but I don't know if Extra Time talked about it, so I'm going to throw it out here. Aiden Morris's counter pressing actions as soon as the ball was turned over in the final third is the single biggest reason, in my opinion, why this game went to Columbus. Every single time the ball got turned over, LAFC's first instinct was, I'm going to hit the long ball diagonal to Bouanga. And the first time they picked their head up, Aiden Morris was right on. Aiden Morris didn't let him turn. Aiden Morris closed down that space. Aiden Morris ran the defensive show for this team, and it set the tone for what they wanted to be. I was unbelievably impressed with Aiden Morris's we've seen what he can do when he's on the ball. We've seen what he can do, in the defensive third, but his commitment to just say, I'm going to go and I'm not going to let him out was a massive, massive reason why LA looked, and I'm going to not mince words here, biz in the first half. Outside of one or two chances that they got because Aiden wasn't in position to press, LA couldn't get anything going. Their midfield was non-existent. They couldn't get the ball to Bouanga. When they did, anybody in the back three was able to clean it up. The game planning was fantastic.
Yeah, I think people might look at the stats and be like, oh, Columbus 62% possession, more shots, like more XG. They'll probably look at that and be like, wow, well, Columbus really dominated the game. But, I do want to give some credit to LAFC. That's the way that they, I think, were going into this game. They weren't going to have the possession. They were going to be the team with the less XG and the less shots. They were going to be the team that countered and tried to beat Columbus that way, because that's exactly what FCC did in the first half against Columbus, and they killed them. They killed them. FCC had them on the ropes and then let it slip late in the game. Maybe it was due to fatigue or whatever it was. Maybe listen to our last episode when we talked about it. But I think to your point, it was a rough first half. I think they did a better job at transitioning in the second half, maybe against some more tired legs. Maybe that helped, but they looked better in the transition. Obviously got their goal through Bouanga. And I think we were talking about this at the time when the game was going on, but it felt like Vela was hurting the transition a little bit. Like it felt like things weren't moving as quickly as they should be. Like the way that Vasquez, Bupenza, and Lucio Costa were linking up and torching the out of position Columbus defense. And I feel like when LAFC had their opportunities to counter, they just weren't as ruthless with it. And I think it hurt them. But I think tactic wise, I think they had the right idea. I just think, I think Tom said it in the interview as well. They just got outplayed by Columbus.
Yeah. And I think the biggest difference really is the Western Conference was weak this year. That's not a, hyperbole. They weren't as strong as the East. So when you sit in against the Western Conference teams, Houston, for example, and you give them 70% of the ball, the biggest thing that they were missing was that instant press when they lose the ball. And LA were able to exploit it. Vancouver, the same way. Exploit it. Columbus picked it up. They coached it. They trained it. And they prevented it. And that was brilliant from Wilfred Nancy and his crew. I didn't mention it in the interview when we were with Tom, but when he talked to me about the Wilfred Nancy messages that he was giving to his team and the faith that he had in his group, that is the type of coach that everybody wants to play for. If you've got a guy who is so set in his ways because he believes it's going to work, not because he doesn't think you can do something, but because he believes it's going to work, and he gives you that belief that you can do it as well, and he feels that passion with you, and he gives you that back, everybody wants to step through and play that. From the 30th man on the roster to the top of the organization, this group is put together so well. Like, it is almost, I'm almost jealous personally. I can't say enough good things about the Columbus Crew and the way that they've done this. But I do want to go into the game a little bit. I don't want to harp completely on the behind the scenes stuff. The first goal, it comes from the penalty spot. The ball gets played in by Yao Yaboa. Diego Rossi tries to flick it over Diego Palacios, I believe that is. And it comes off his chest and into his hand. Your feelings about the decision for penalty here?
Well, our both of our instant reactions was that it looked like it came off the chest and then the hand, and I think we had thought that meant it wasn't going to be a penalty. And based on looking at the replays when they were still looking at it, I think we were like, there's no way this is going to be a penalty. Like, it clearly looks like it comes off his chest and then hits him in the arm. And then I think you had found some more info. I feel like I'm contradicting myself saying this statement, but I think you had found some more info on Twitter about it. Obviously, not always the best source unless you're looking at Tom's Twitter. But I think there was something where even if the hand is out of position and it hits off the chest, it still counts as a handball. So then, if that is the rule, I'm not saying it necessarily 100% is, but if that is the rule, then they probably got the call right, I would say. Because I think his arm was sticking out a little far, made himself bigger. So instant reaction was, there's no way this is a pen. I think looking into it a little bit more makes sense with the call on the field.
So first off, don't say we, because I, from the moment it happened, knew exactly what the call was going to be.
That's
never
not true.
faltered.
We were on a call. I saw it live with my own 2 eyes.
Were you recording it? I don't think so. No, completely right. The first instinct, the ball comes off the chest, and you're thinking, okay, I've seen this 900 times. When the ball deflects off somebody's body part that is illegal playing and it hits somebody in the hand, they say play on. But Andrew Wiebe, host of Instant Replay, very good segment, came out and found the rule and basically said, if your arm is in an unnatural position when the ball comes off the chest or the leg or whatever, it is still handled. Whereas if it's still by your side, which is where a lot of these things happen, where somebody's got his hands down by his side, sticks a leg out to block it, and it deflects up into the arm, then that doesn't constitute. But because Palacios had his arm up here, like he's waving, that was in an unnatural position. The referee crew got it spot on. And I know people were upset about it originally, but I think after a little bit of time had gone by, everyone was kind of like, okay, yeah, that's the correct call. It set a tone, though, right? It set the tone that was being kind of laid for the last 30 minutes of this game, that the crew were coming at you, and you were always going to be second to the ball. You were always going to have to deal with these weird little flicks into space. The crew set the tone, and this was the result of it. You had players that you expect to boss the game, right? Illy Sanchez was all in bottom right last year. Today or this week, he was all into nothing. He was just watching the ball go around. He was second to everything. Kellen Acosta in the same breath. Tillman was okay. But that whole midfield three was getting worked by Darlington Nagbe and Aiden Morris. That sort of dominance from those two players, it just, they couldn't do anything about it. right? And it left different spaces for them to check into and work off of, and the formation helped them. But this came off of setting the tone, right? And then you come in and Pucho Hernandez comes in and slides it home, no problem. And then we get into what is easily the greatest goal in MLS Cup history. It was a 12 pass sequence that took it from the top of the 18-yard box at the LA goal, worked it around to the right side of the field, all the way back to Malte Amundsen playing left center back, who hit the ball of the century into a Yao Yaboa run. I have been watching this goal on repeat for the last week. And I know allegedly we were on a call where I was saying some things, and I could not stop losing my mind over this goal, as most people who watch this game were saying so. I actually sent it to a group of friends who are football, hockey, basketball guys, and they were like, that goal is pretty cool, but are you excited because of the pass? Because the pass was unreal. And I go, there you go, guys. You're picking up on what we're putting down. I can't remember the last time I've seen something this good. Maybe because I watch Red Bull week in and week out, but
Yeah, you're only saying that because Red Bull have what, one goal in MLS Cup? Actually, you probably have more than one goal in MLS Cup final history, but
nope,
no, just one. All
only
right,
made one final.
That's true. Yeah, I don't know why I assumed you made more.
Yeah,
shame on me for thinking that.
Yeah, you silly boy.
Yeah, I mean that was such an outrageous goal. It was just ridiculous. I mean, I felt like that's just summed up the Crew's entire playoff run right there. Just unreal ball movement and off the ball movement and finishing ability. It's so much fun to watch. That's MLS 4.0 to a T, and I want to see that from every single team in the league. I know I won't because we have teams like Chicago in the league, but I would love to see teams from across the league be able to do that. It's insane. I'm completely transitioning to a separate topic. I hope it doesn't go too far off topic, but it's insane what Columbus has been able to get out of Malte Amundsen with this team, because I feel like the entire game he was just pinging balls across the field. I remember just before that, he hit some ridiculous cross-field diagonal ball to Cucho Hernandez on the wing. I don't think anything happened out of the attack, but it was a ridiculous pass. Like, it went straight to the foot of Cucho Hernandez, and he was, I don't know the dimensions of a soccer field, but I'm just gonna say
good.
very far away.
The craziest thing about that pass is it has happened multiple times this year. Like, this isn't a MLS Cup moment of brilliance. This is a like strategic, I want you to play this ball if it's on type of identity. It happened in Hell is Real in the regular season. It happened against Minnesota in the Leagues Cup, and it happened in another game before that in the same sort of thing. The ball gets moved around. Malte Amundsen picks it up in the basically the center of the park, kind of offset to the left. Yaboa checks himself all the way out to the wing, thinking he's going to get the ball at his feet. Defender comes and checks him, and then part the Red Sea, run in behind it. And Malte hits a heck of a ball, man. That was beautiful. But again, to Wilfred Nancy's point, this is identity. This is how I want to play. This is Columbus Crew football. That's the way I'm going to describe it. This is Columbus Crew football. They go out there, they move their pieces. They don't care how many passes it takes. That ball started on a 3-on-3 break into the LAFC attack, and they put their foot on the ball at the top of the 18. They're like, we're not going to get out of this right now. Let's cycle it around. Knock it back, knock it around. Patience, into Nagby, into Rossi. Let's swing it. Everybody shifted over to the right side. Let's swing it over to Amundsen. Oh, great. We've got numbers up on this side. Let's play that ball in, right? And everybody knows where it's going. Everybody on that team knows where it's going. It's so, so beautiful to see a team commit to an identity that's that pretty. You don't see teams like that. Portland, for a while in MLS, like 3.0, was that team for me. When I would watch Portland play, it was always very much keep the ball, have the ball, move the ball. Diego Valeri is going to get open eventually, but we don't need him to have it right now type of thing. Um, NYC for a while played really, really pretty when they had, other players who can do that. Columbus is taking the reins of, okay, this is a style we're going to play, and they're going to keep it that way. It is really nice to see that because, as you mentioned, it's a transition, right? We want to see MLS 4.0, MLS 5.0 be better soccer, right? We've got the better players, we've got the better, fan base, we've got the better stadiums. Now we want to see better soccer, and that's what I think is a really big point there.
It's funny you mentioned that because while we were watching the game, I was thinking in my mind, I'm like, I really feel like when I'm watching this, I'm watching like a completely different style of play from what I've seen previously in this league.
Yeah,
Because when I think back to like early days watching and following the league, it was so much just like dump and run, just who's going to be the most athletic person on the field to win the game for the team. And now I felt like we were playing more, I don't want to say like a European style because I don't want to be a Euro snob, but it didn't feel like we were just doing dunk and run. I'm sorry, dump and run. It felt like there was actual meaning behind the passes and players making like smart off the ball movements and playing to a system. Like it just felt so good watching the game. It felt like I was watching like I don't want to say professional game because that makes it sound like it's unprofessional before that, but it just felt so I don't know if I can think of the right word to describe it. It just felt
let me
sorry,
let
go
me
ahead.
let me help you out there. Sorry, I don't want to cut you off, but you're not wrong, right? If you watch a Red Bull game, especially Gerard Struber's Red Bull and desperation Red Bull when they were trying to make the playoffs, it's disgusting. It is ugly, ugly football. Intentionally, they want to make it that way. Very rarely, and we're seeing it more and more. There are more teams who are picking up this identity of how they want to play. They want to keep the ball, they want to move it, or they want to sit in and they want to counter and they want to be deadly on the counter. That's fine. It's an identity. But 5 years ago, when we just go back 5 years ago, that's what you're not wrong. Atlanta brought out this style of play that was like big, explosive, attacking football with possession oriented in the midfield, finding a checking striker, laying it off, and having a third man running. Stuff just didn't happen, right? 5 years ago. It's a different system of league play. Again, as money goes up, and I don't want to drive it too deep into roster rules and things like that, but
Here we go.
as you drive money up and as you drive desire to play here, right? You're not playing at empty college stadiums anymore. You're not playing at empty baseball stadiums. You're playing at full, massive capacity areas. And that is drawing people here, bringing more talent here. And again, the coaching now is getting better as well. So different levels to this sort of stuff.
We gotta stop talking about coaching. Every time we keep talking about Wilfred Nancy and coaching, I'm just getting more and more sad at the fact that I'm sure he's very close to a move out of this league.
Yeah. And that's the struggle with being a development league, right? And that's not a bad thing to call us because for a while we were the opposite. We were the retirement,
Retirement. Yeah.
right? So retirement to development and then to destination of choice. It's a pathway. Um, right before halftime, I wanted to ask you about this too. LAFC had a chance to level this game and they missed by inches. 1 minute left in extra time, have the chance to level it, and it goes by. What do you think the message is if it goes in at halftime, 2-1 instead of 2-0?
I would think that, it's even though you're still down one goal, it's got to feel like a level game at that point. Like you took that's a big gut punch to Columbus to have your lead cut in half right before the halftime because it's just like it just I'm sure it feels like oh we just couldn't hold out for 1 or 2 more minutes just to get to halftime and now we're setting ourselves up to be on potentially on the back foot for an entire 45 minutes like we can't make any errors at this point because all it takes is one goal and they're back in the game but having missed that chance now all of a sudden you do have that little bit of cushion and I know people talk about like 2-0 lead that's the most dangerous lead in the entire sport and I definitely get that I think it gets teams too comfortable but I think it's a little different when mean, it's MLS Cup Final, and a trophy's on the line. I think you stay focused the whole game, but still, same thing. Like, there's no cushion to mess up. Nobody can do a. Oh my god, I'm blanking on his name. Probably for good reason. I don't need to curse him again on this podcast, but you know who I'm talking about. There's no room for that in this game if you concede in the 45th, because then if that happens, like, first of all, that's got to be a huge hit to the team's motivation and spirit, but also now you're tied in the game. You're on mute.
Said I'm kind of disappointed you didn't drop names there.
I'm honestly I'm blanking on his name, but also I'd rather not curse him again. He's been cursed enough. Oh, I do remember the name now, and I'm not going to say it because I don't want him to get cursed again from this podcast.
What if you reverse it though?
Keller Kip.
No. So for me, right, and I think you touched on it a lot, is if you go in at 2-1, your message. So let me back up. Wilfred Nancy's message wouldn't have changed, by the way. It would have been the same thing. We're still us. We're still going to play our game. Blah 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 blah. Do your thing. But in the player's head, you got one or two of them who are thinking, this isn't good, right? And that is a massive difference if you only need to get one versus the two. So I dare say that if LAFC score that at halftime, I think they might have been able to get it to extra. And again, it would have been 2-2 based off of the scores there, but it would have been a much different game. Like, Columbus came out and dominated that play. You have to wonder, even if the message wouldn't have changed, if one or two of the players would have taken less risks, right? If one or two of the players would have stayed at home instead of making that press. If Aiden Morris doesn't close space better than he was doing in the first half, things like that. Moving forward into the second half, it's 3 minutes into the half. Cucha Hernandez driving the ball up the left side. Carlos Vela comes in and absolutely ruins him. Yellow card shown. Thoughts?
Sorry, almost did the same thing as you. Oh man, I wish I could rewatch it because I kind of I do remember right I do remember it a little bit. I think, was this the one where he was
rolled
this a
around
trailing
like a
foot?
fish? Yeah, rolled around like a fish.
Oh yeah, I do think I saw a clip of that. Was it? It was Cucho. Was it Cucho? It was just like rolling very extrally, if that's a word, on the floor. If you send me the clip, I'll take a look at it.
Let's do everything for you.
Nah, it's probably a good. I have to grab food in like a minute anyway, so maybe it's a good place for us to pause really quick.
All right, Connor. So you've seen the video. I want to know your decision. Yellow, red, no card, no foul. What do you think?
I feel like I gotta say, I feel like it should have. I'll say I think it should have been. Oh God, sorry. I know I'm watching it at the moment. I just want to see. I would say red. I think he went studs up high. Like, I don't think he was. To be honest, I don't think he was going for the ball at all. That looked like a frustration tackle. I almost feel like Cucho's excessive rolling might have even hurt his chance at Vela getting a red. It looked like he was just selling. I mean, that's some Neymar level rolling. Like, it's insane. But yeah, I would say red. I mean, that did not. It honestly didn't look like he was going for the ball. Studs were up. They were kind of high. So that's what I would say.
So for me, and it's definitely not an easy decision. For me, I'm okay with yellow. I think yellow is not a bad decision, but if they gave red, I wouldn't have been shocked either. It's endangering the safety. It is reckless, it's dangerous, and it's forceful, right? So it checks all the boxes. However, I agree with you. I think the excessive rolling almost was like, all right, man, get up. And the one view that we have, at least the one view that they've shown, it looks like his back leg gets him, not the front leg. Now,
Yeah.
again, if you watch it really, really slow back, I'm sure you can probably see where his front leg makes some contact. I'm watching it again. Yeah, I'm sure you can slow it down by okay, there's the contact. And that's what VAR is for. But is it clear and obvious right now to say that that should have been a red? I don't think so. So I'm okay with yellow there. But if he had given red and not changed it, I also wouldn't have been okay with it, if that makes sense.
I wonder if the referee would have been more tempted to do it if it wasn't an MLS Cup final game, which I know is that's a whole like subject in itself, like enforcement of the rules in regular games versus in cup final games. But I feel like the referee might be a little more hesitant in a final to show red than he would just like a regular season game.
Yeah, definitely wanted to keep control of the game. I don't disagree at all. And by the way, we haven't really mentioned this, and that's probably indicative of the entire match. I thought they did a great job. This wasn't one Barden controversy where it's like, oh my God, I can't believe he gave X, Y, and Z. Thought the whole crew did a great job. So hats off to the entire crew, Villarreal and friends. Kevin Stott on the VAR, I believe, was in there as well. Really,
Are
really
you
well refereed game, I think.
are you spoiling your pick for your referee of the year next year?
Whoa, whoa, whoa! Hold on now. We haven't gotten there just yet.
I can't wait for that. That's the thing I think I'm most looking forward to next season is us picking our predictions for referee of the year.
That's gonna be absolute scenes. It's gonna make every game. We're gonna have to live stream the games that our referees are in, and just lose our minds after every time they miss a call.
I hope someone sees me watching like a Miami Cincinnati game and they're like, "Oh, are you watching the game to watch Messi?" I'm like, "No, I'm here to watch Ted Uncle. Ted Uncle
Yeah, if you pick
masterclass
Ted
coming
Uncle
in."
as your referee of the year, you're off the podcast.
We
Um,
got sidetracked. We should get back on
we did.
topic.
We're back in meme zone. But again, Columbus continuing to put pressure, continuing to put pressure. Probably should have been up a couple. Ball cleared off the line. Ball cleared off a 1v1 with the goalkeeper. You've got corner kicks flying in. They just dominated the game. And again, it goes back to this idea of what we were talking about before. If this is 2-1, do you see this same level of dominance? I don't know if you do.
This is such a hard topic to come across because let's just say like stats and everything stays the same and you flip the score line and LAFC wins this 2-1. Does the argument become LAFC got lucky and they FIFA'd Columbus, or is this exactly the way that they set up to try and play? Is we're not going to be the team that's going to win the XG battle. We're not going to be the team that wins the ball possession battle. Like we're sitting here absorbing the pressure and counterattacking the way that we want and have been playing. Is because I feel like, the way that we both probably saw this going into the game was that Columbus was going to be the team dominating and attacking and having most of the chances. It was just a matter of were LAFC going to be able to sustain it and how good were they going to be on the counter. I feel like they just weren't good enough on the counter. Like I'm not saying that like LAFC, didn't play poorly or that Columbus didn't play well, but I feel like it's hard to say like, oh, Columbus dominated because they were the better team. I do think they were the better team, but I think it was also just a matter of this was going to be the style of play for each team coming in.
No, and correct in your point, right? They weren't good enough in the counter. We go to the 57th minute. Long ball gets played in direct, try and counter, try and get your numbers up. Camacho botches the clearance. He puts a header on the top of the 18-yard box to Carlos Vela, whose entire career has been receiving the ball, faking with his right, cutting to his left, and curling it. And he hits a half volley with his right foot from 20 yards out. Like the decision making wasn't great. The execution wasn't great. And I think Steve Cherundolo said it when he came out. They didn't show up to play. They didn't put in a game plan together. They didn't execute. They missed all three boxes. And that play, I think, was indicative of it. Now you fast forward to the 76th minute, and you're looking at this throw in from the right side of the 74th minute, excuse me. And the press finally works, right? For the first time, their press is organized. Their press it makes sense. And it comes from Jesus Murillo, who after halftime was like, screw this, I'm doing everything on my own, who was massive for LAFC, but fantastic game. Very, very good. But he finally organizes the press properly. which his midfield wasn't doing at all. Steps in front. He wins the ball off of a very rare Darlington Nagbe turnover, who's trying to play the ball into Diego Rossi's feet. Murillo gets there first. He carries on through, and he squares the ball across. Carlos Vela, it looks like he's fouled in the buildup. Denny Bouanga rips the ball straight off of Patrick Schulte's face. Rebound comes back, and he finishes the ball. Who else but Denny? Nobody else. We mentioned it. Denny's a one-man crew, and if you could stop him, you could stop the team, right? But again, I want to note this specific moment because a change of the momentum comes here, right? Where Schulte's down on the ground. He's, bloodied. His face is up, and he gets up and he looks at the crowd. He pumps him up, and the crowd goes nuts. You could hear it on the broadcast. You could hear it, I'm sure, streets away from the stadium. You can hear them going absolutely nuts. Again, that sort of environment, the buy-in from the club, the buy-in from the fans, all of this stuff push this team to the next level, right? He gets up, and this is a team that's not super bought in. Or let's go back a couple years, 6, 7, 8 years now. I don't know how far back, where MLS Cup was played at a neutral site. He gets up, and it's like, okay, he just got hit in the face. We just got scored on. We got to defend for 20 more minutes, and the crowd's just kind of like, whatever. Like if this was Columbus LAFC and they all had to travel to Miami to play, I mean, that would have meant nothing. But because they were at home, because they had the fans at their back, they were able to be pushed into this next level of effort to defend for these next 20 minutes. And I thought it was really impressive. I don't want to know if you saw a change in their players of, when this happened.
Oh man, this Schulte moment was it just felt like such a retro MLS legend goalkeeper moment. Like, tell me you couldn't see Bushy or like Joe Cannon, Zach Thornton doing something like that in early days MLS. Like, ball to the face, make some ridiculous save, and then I know he still ended up getting scored on. That's not to his fault, but tell me you couldn't see that, and then like bloody nose, getting the crowd amped up. Like that reminds me of we covered it in one of our history episodes. Was it Dyak when he got the red and he was pumping the crowd up as he was leaving? That reminded me of early days MLS. I mean, I know it wasn't as hectic as early days MLS, but it just kind of gave me that flashback of it. But I definitely think it was a switch in momentum of the game because there's 15 minutes plus stoppage time left at this point. Columbus is still up. I think that's where you saw that switch to, okay, we're not gonna be as aggressive pressing and attacking anymore. Like, we have the lead, let's try and keep it and bunker in right now. And then you saw that with like less than 10 minutes later, they made a double swap to bring in 2 defensive players and take out Nagbe and Yeboah. So I think it was a big moment. I think it definitely, that had to have been a good moment for the players on the field just to see their goalkeeper get up so motivated after a moment like that and focusing on amping the crowd up and amping his teammates up. I'm sure that's got to be a great momentum boost for them, even though they just conceded a goal.
Yeah. And this is where I want to end it. And it's the meaning behind this. The second, and Tom touched on this in the interview, the second that final whistle blew, everybody lost their tears, hugs, celebrations. Darlington Nagbe breaking down in the middle of the field. Wilfried Nancy tearing up during his interview. I'm tired, and I'm not tired. I should rephrase this. I don't ever want to hear this whole nobody cares about playing in this league anymore, because this game is a perfect example of what it means to show up every single day, fight for something that you want to get to, and finally get to the promised land. Every single person saw this as a major achievement to them. This wasn't just some, oh yeah, cool, we won a trophy, let's move on and do it again next year. Every single person had this elation come over them, and it transcended through the crowd. It transcended through the locker room. Tom mentioned a lot of these guys, their first trophy in their career, right? It sets them up for bigger and better things. Wilfried Nancy coming in and finally achieving his goal after putting together a fighting through a ton of, I don't want to say backlash, but I believe if you look at the Crew's early games, there were some games that they absolutely got annihilated. Um, yeah, their first game they lost 4-1. You had a 3-2 loss at Cincy, but for the most part, I mean, they were up in it. You know, a couple of big goal wins, but they started off 4-1, losing to Philadelphia. Now you're thinking, okay, we want to be a possession based team. We want to try and fight our way out of whatever. What the heck are we going to do? This clearly isn't working. He stuck to his guns. He stuck to his system, and he came out and he absolutely proved that you can play beautiful soccer in this league. You can commit to a system that isn't just kick, run, chase, and hit. And to have it all come together, that emotion that overcame him was really nice to see because, again, showing that this stuff means something to somebody, you've got 10,000 kids in Columbus who are watching that game thinking that's going to be me. Maybe. I don't know if that's necessarily true. But if they walked off the field and like, oh, okay, whatever, well, then everybody watching is like, oh, okay, whatever. Building that culture and building that feeling of winning in this city, in this, league, it matters. Like when a team wins in the NFL, wins the Super Bowl, wins the World Series, wins the Stanley Cup. Having it mean that much to an individual now just made a whole bunch of people who are supporting this, who are in the Cruise Academy, watching Schulte, watching Quinton, watching Zawadzki, all of these guys, watching these players, watching Aiden Morris, Farsi. I can be that guy too, and I want to be that guy too. That was always a big thing I heard when we were growing up was like, nobody dreams of playing for New York Red Bull or Columbus Crew. That's changing. And these games are what that's about, in my opinion. I think having that sort of emotion come out influenced massively the next generation of what this group can be.
And you know what? I think some of that has to go to the credit of the way the Crew played. They just played fun attacking soccer. And that comes back to Wilfred Nancy. I feel like so much comes down to the how good of coaches we have in this league. I think that genuinely makes the Premier League one of the best leagues in the world. Is just the quality of coaches that they've had over time. I mean, you think about like all the best managers in the history of the sport, and almost all of them have coached in the Premier League at some point. I think we gotta just keep trying to make more Wilfred Nancy's in the league, and being able to hold on to them. I think that's the next big step here is how do you keep a hold of this guy? How do you not let him go off to Europe? I mean, obviously you don't want to stop his development if that's something that he wants to do, but throw all the money. If it's a money thing, throw all the money you have to keep this guy here. He is a difference maker. I think the way he plays has gotten people so excited about the team locally. It made this run in the playoffs that much more better. And I think some of it, like look at they started the playoff run playing against Atlanta. That series was super high scoring and a lot of fun. That had to have gotten people hooked. Then they're going to play against Orlando, which was going to be another tough battle for them, especially as the road team. They got through that, set up the perfect conference finals matchup against your rival. You're down 2-0, you come back, take the lead, win the game. I mean, that set up I think that set everything up perfectly for the final. People had to have been talking about it. They had to have been amped up about it. They had to have been super excited about it. Columbus was going to be hosting, like just so many things to make the entire city of Columbus back the Crew there. And I think I'd almost argue there's no better fan base in this league that deserved this more after the whole Save the Crew movement. So it's great to see that they were able to get their moment here.
I think that's spot on. I think that's really, really spot on. Again, it's stuff that now fans who are a part of the league for a couple years, not ones who just joined because of Messi yet, because they don't have that connection, but fans who really have bought in and have watched their team fail and fail and fail. And I'm not just talking about me. But those people who are now looking, saying, I wish I could be in a stadium when that happens to my club. Stuff that didn't happen 10 years ago because that bond wasn't there for the most part. I mean, you have your lifers, but this new wave of support and fans is what's growing this league. And these moments, being in a stadium, watching your team, a full stadium. They were there in 2020 with 1,500 people, a full stadium with everyone screaming, chanting, supporting for your team outside of the couple thousand that LAFC won. Those are the memories that now, if you were a family of 4 and you had kids who were 10 and 8 at that game, lifelong fans. If you're a family of 4 watching that game from home and you're celebrating it like you're there, lifelong fans. That's the difference between MLS 1.0 and wherever the heck we're going to go. These are the games that matter. And that is my soapbox speech.
I appreciate it. I appreciate your speech. It was very moving.
I'm glad. And I'm glad that you are now completely bought into supporting local and supporting New York Red Bull.
No, not happening. I can't switch my allegiance. You would dog on me more for doing that than for
only if you went to the wrong team. That's all. You could switch to my team any day of the week. I've got you with open arms, buddy.
Not gonna happen.
All right, y'all. Thanks so much for listening to episode 200 and maybe 201, depending on how we cut this up. We hope you enjoyed it. We really enjoyed it. Thanks so much again for Tom Bogert for jumping on and sharing his experience with us at this game. We hope you enjoyed the game, and we can't wait to be back for season 5. 5 years we're about to start doing this. That's insanity.
Is it really 5 years? No, it can't be 5 years. I don't think that's right.
2000, 2001, 2002, 2003. We're about to start year 5.
2002. But we're on season 3.
No, we're on season 4.
I see season 3. You know what? This is a conversation for after the episode.
So for those of you listening, we are going to take a break here in the next couple of weeks for the holiday season. We're going to go home. We're going to see our families and take a break from the pod.
Andrew's finally letting me see my family again.
Yeah, he's being released from his pod duties. Not quite, but we'll get we're going to take a break, and then we're going to come back. We're going to do some top 10s for fun. We're going to do some MLS history. We're going to get back into that as we go into MLS 2.0. And then it's right back to work. We're going to give you our season previews. We're going to give you our not so deep dives. We're going to give you all the things that you have come to know and love from the Designated Players
Silly
podcast.
Season. Don't forget Silly Season.
And Silly Season. You can never forget Silly Season, but that's why you
just
follow
had
us.
Tom on. You're not going to talk about Silly Season.
What do you mean? That's why you follow us on Twitter, because Silly Season lives through the Designated Player podcast, quote tweeting Tom Bogert. Make sure you're following us on all social media, but especially Twitter, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok. Just search the Designated Players podcast. We'll pop up for you. And make sure you're interacting with us. We're going to go ahead and keep on top of as much of the transfer news as we can, including some of the stuff that's breaking right now as we speak. So make sure you're over there interacting with us, having a good time. Make sure you follow us wherever you get your podcasts, so you know when we come back for season 5. And until then, we will catch you next time on the next episode of the Designated Players podcast. See ya.